never film in front of windows. She says, doing exactly that anyway. I am traveling from LA to Chicago for a conference and then down to Oklahoma to see some family and back to LA. And I am driving the whole way because I love a good road trip. But if you're gonna spend that long on the road, you gotta make some stops, right? Maybe some very specific stops at a very specific type of store. Yeah, I want to use this opportunity to visit some creative reuse stores, what you might know better as crafting thrift stores. Actually, can y'all give me some insight on terminology here? Creative reuse is the term that I'm seeing most officially used for these type of stores by the stores themselves, but I'm not sure that it's like a widely known term in the public. What would you call a thrift store, a store that runs off of donations, but selling specifically art and craft supplies, or specifically sewing supplies? Let me know. But also, if you didn't know, they are referring to themselves as creative reuse stores. And regardless of how they're best known, these places absolutely rock. I'm sure you have heard me refer to Remainder's Creative Reuse, which is close enough to me that I'm able to drive there every few months, and is basically the reason I dove into sewing as hardcore as I did. The vast majority of my fabric comes from Remainder's, to say nothing of the other many various supplies that I've gotten there for delightfully low prices. So because they are my basis of comparison, and despite the fact that I've been there many times before, Remainder's is going to be our first official creative reuse stop. They're located in Pasadena with a good-sized store on the bottom floor, a large craft space on the second floor where they have classes, meetups, craft fairs, and even exhibitions, and then a donation drop-off area behind the building where there's also limited parking. Honestly, it's often full back there, but there is plenty of street parking in the surrounding areas as well. Their fabric on the bolt, or yardage you could say, is mostly $4 a yard, with some nicer materials up at $6 a yard, and some they're trying to get rid of down at $1 a yard. They also have many bins of fabric remnants, and you can stuff a whole bag with as many as possible for just $15 right now. I'm just gonna highlight a few other supplies in each store that I visit because there's always such a varied plethora. So here we have zippers, $1 or 6 for $5, patterns, $1 each, and a pretty solid variety of yarn, trim, embroidery floss, sewing thread. Outside the textile arts arena, we have paper, pencils, stamps, pieces of wood, notebooks, like so much stuff, y'all. And they often get larger supplies donated, like sewing machines. Of course, because they're operating off donations, their stock constantly changes and you never know what you'll find there, which is one of the many things that makes them incredible in my opinion. I absolutely love this store. It made sewing possible for me when I had a very small budget, and it's keeping supplies out of landfills, which who doesn't want that? You may be surprised to find that there are more and more creative reuse stores like Remainder's opening across the country, but I did some digging, I did some mapping, and I found over 100 of them. I want to visit all of the stores that land in my triangular path here, bring some attention to them, let you know what they're like, all that same stuff that I just shared for Remainder's. Where they are, what kind of stock they have, basic prices for stuff, what the parking situation is like. My goal is to eventually visit every single creative reuse store on my list, but for now, we're just sticking with the ones that are on my already planned out path. Let's go on a creative reuse road trip, y'all. Huzzah! I started a day before my actual road trip with a visit to Quilting for Community, another fabric thrift store that's somewhat local to me in the LA area. I can't believe I've never been here. Despite sort of marketing themselves as a store for quilters, and believe me, they have an incredible array of quilting cotton and even entirely finished quilts you can purchase, they also have a decent amount of garment fabric, upholstery fabric. I even spotted some faux fur down there. They have patterns for $1 each, various ribbons and trims, some yarn, nicely organized by the fiber content, embroidery floss, this is vintage DMC, y'all, and a good array of notions, craft books, totes, and more. They are specifically a sewing thrift store though, so they don't have those general art supplies. Their fabric is all $3 a yard at the moment, though I did overhear them telling a customer that it's going up to $4 a yard in July. This is 2025 if you're watching from the future. That is still that same base level price that you can find at Remainder's. They also have fill a bag options sections for smaller pieces, which I think is especially appealing to quilters or anyone who likes patchworking. There's parking out front, gotta shout out Easy Parking, and the ladies working there were absolutely lovely. After driving through California, Nevada, and a bit of Arizona, I hit Making Space Thrift in Utah, sort of just outside Salt Lake City. It's a little standalone store with parking around and gorgeous mountains as a backdrop, and it's a little chaotic inside, in the best sense possible. There's organization there. I appreciated how fabrics were split up around the store based on type, like flannel together, knit together, upholstery together, etc. But it also has the feeling of digging through someone's stash, which I always enjoy. 'Tis like a treasure hunt. Their fabric was $4 a yard, they have patterns for $2, remnants and scraps for $10 a pound, yarn for 45 cents an ounce, and quite a large stock of leather, which I was told was a recent donation from a local business. I have made a spreadsheet and a Google map, both of which are linked in the description, that have every single creative reuse store I could find in America listed on there, whichever, version you prefer to look at. The spreadsheet also has some info like location, opening days, donation days, the website, whether they offer classes or have a creative space. I just wanted a record of all of these amazing stores in one place for easy reference, and of course I wanted to share that with all of you. So check it out and let me know if there is one that's close enough for you to visit. Also in the description is a Google form that you can fill out if there's a creative reuse store you know of that's not on the list that I didn't find. There is absolutely no personal information on that form. You don't need to tell me a thing about yourself. I just want to know, something about the store if you know of one. Its name, its website, whatever you got. Because crowdsourcing information is often the best way to get information. You can also use that same Google form if you see any mistakes that I've made on the spreadsheet, if somebody's hours are wrong or their address is wrong or something. Because ultimately, if you leave me a comment or send me a DM with this information, I might miss it. So just fill out that form and then we'll be able to keep that spreadsheet up to date. Right now, the spreadsheet is just American locations, but if some international people know of stores like this in your own country and would like to share, I would absolutely love to add tabs onto that sheet and start putting those in for countries around the whole world. Make it a worldwide thing. I mean, I travel, so I would love to know where I could stop off for some crafty, thrifty goodness in another country. Just as an overall note, I do want to keep this spreadsheet and map specifically for arts and craft thrift stores, or at least thrift stores that mostly have arts and craft supplies. So it's not really the place for your clothing thrift stores or home furnishing thrift stores or hardware salvage stores and stuff like that. We gotta narrow it down a little bit to stay organized. Magpies in Fort Collins, Colorado is one of those treasure trove stores that's so fun to walk through slowly. You've got gifts and collectibles and local art and antiques in the back, and then the arts and crafts thrift store is actually a little separate area upstairs. It's so neat and tidy with such a massive variety of items. Someone who does dioramas or assemblage would love it here. There's not a huge amount of fabric compared to some of the other stores, but definitely a good selection, which they sell for $6 a pound. Patterns are $1 to $2. There was lots of embroidery floss for 25 cents, a good amount of yarn, and plenty of easy parking out front. Moving down to Boulder, Colorado, we've got Art Parts Creative Reuse. Already from the outside of the building, plenty of parking, y'all, I was like, this place is huge. And yeah, the store is big and open and impeccably organized and labeled. If you can't stand a mess but want to shop secondhand art supplies, you should come here. They have everything under the sun. I firmly believe you could get enough items to start any new art or craft within this one store. Fabric is mostly $2 a yard, although they don't have a ton of it comparatively. There's a decent amount of yarn though, and loads of notions, thread, supplies for every kind of fiber art. They also have an insane number of sewing machines and this loom that seriously tempted me despite never having used one before. In Denver, Colorado, we have the Craft Box, which had a bit more of a regular boutique craft store feel than a thrift store feel to me, which I don't really know what that means. It was just the vibe that I got. It smelled like freshly baked banana bread when I walked inside. There was parking out front, and there was immediately so much delightful quilting cotton. Everything was quite organized again. I love this tub of stamps. And while they do have general crafting supplies, the focus is more on fabric and sewing supplies. I liked how there were some fabrics sort of tucked into displays all around the store. They had patterns for $1 to $3, and it looked like most of their fabric is $7 a yard, though I did see some that went up to $12 a yard and some that went down to $3.50 a yard. Also, most of the quilting cotton looks like regular new fabric rather than donations, which it very well might be. I think this store is a fun mix of both. We are still in Denver, now at Recreative. There is some street parking around and a few spaces in the alley behind the building. This one is mostly general art supplies when you first come in, and then the sewing specific area is up a ramp to the side. They also have studios upstairs, and if you keep going back, there's a workshop. Yarn seemed nicely priced. The patterns didn't have any pricing on them, but they do have a lot, and their remnant fabric is $3 a yard, while the fabric by the yard ranges from $6 to $8 a yard. Definitely not quite as organized overall, but definitely not a mess. A lot of fun if you like digging for treasure. One thing that I do want to point out about pretty much all of these creative reuse stores is that they often aren't open every day of the week. In fact, some of them are only open one day of the week. They also usually have specific days or times for you to drop off donations, or they might ask that you make an appointment in order to drop off donations. All completely fair. These places are usually being run by all or mostly volunteers. They need time to make sure that the store is restocked and organized, and going through giant piles of donations is way harder and more time consuming than unloading a typical pallet of stock from, a normal warehouse. I'm just noting it because before you zip off to check one of these out, I do recommend double checking those opening days and hours. Way back in the day, I want to say it was like my second or third time going to Remainders, I just picked up and drove my way on over there and did not realize until I arrived that it was their closing day. There are also several stores that were technically on my road trip route that I took here, but they simply weren't open around the days that I would be passing through that city. So all the more reason to come back and travel again and visit more. Having crossed all of Nebraska and most of Iowa, we come to the Create Exchange in Cedar Rapids. They don't have a huge sign, but trust the map, they are there with plenty of parking to boot. This place is big and impeccably organized. They're actually more like a general thrift store with a crafting focus, so they have everything under the sun. Plenty of fabric, mostly $2 to $3 a yard, and nicely organized by fiber. Yarn for $1 to $4 per skein depending on the size. Embroidery floss $5 for $1, and guess what? Their patterns, except for doll clothes patterns, are free. Quick shout out to Make It Yours Upcycle and the Skeleton Key, which are both sort of in this area of Iowa, but I could not make it there before they closed for the day. After a few days at the conference, actually it's an industry trade show to be more accurate, I had time to drive out to Greener Good in Arlington Heights. This is another one that just has a little bit of everything, so many secondhand treasures. Their sewing or fabric supply isn't as vast, but there are definitely some goodies in there, and they even have these amazing fabrications made by their volunteers that you can purchase. The fabrications, not the volunteers. Fabric range from $1 to $3 a yard, with some specialty pieces more expensive. Zippers were mostly 75 cents, and yarn was 30 to 90 cents per ounce. They had a lot of books and supplies for teachers too, all neatly organized. I kind of want to find a project to do with these Scrabble tiles now. Moving more into the city, we have one of two waste shed locations. This one is a little tricky for parking, but it has a little of everything. Not as fabric focused. The section wasn't huge, but had some really tempting options. Each was priced separately, but it seemed like prices ranged from $4 to $6 a yard. They had patterns for $1 and a few sewing machines and a knitting machine for sale too. Zippers for $1, a bunch of rug tufting yarn, which is pretty rare to find. Lots of treasures for sure. Of course, I had to check out the Wayshed's other location, this one being up in Evston with such a fun facade. Lots of easy parking out front too. I love that they have an area in this store that's free supplies for educators, and they're connected to what seems to be a hardware reclaim store, so that's cool. The products are all very neat, if overflowing their boundaries in some places, and again, this is an everything under the sun store with a smaller sewing specific area. As with their other location, fabrics seem to range from $3 to $7 a yard mostly, patterns are 50 cents to $2, and yarn starts at $1. They also have a surprisingly large amount of tapestry wool and a great collection of books. If you want to donate to one of these stores, make sure you check their website first for a list of what they accept and what they don't accept. It won't be the same across the board. Some stores also only accept donations on specific days or through appointments so that they can be ready for you, and almost all of them ask that you make an appointment if you're bringing a large donation, although what they personally qualify as large does vary. So I did put a little bit of info about donation days on the spreadsheet, but yeah, just like the opening hours, it's wise to double check. Don't overwhelm them with a whole carload of stuff with no warning. Also, I find it fascinating how many of these places say that they are overwhelmed with donations. Like they've had to pause taking donations because they have so many, or like they ask you make an appointment, but they have a wait list because so many people want to donate. I just think that that shows how many materials are out there that can be recycled, reused, passed on to other makers and teachers. If these stores are overwhelmed with donations, logic says that we could maybe use a few more stores, yeah? Cover some more area, become even more accessible. We're all for that. Back on the road, we've moved down to St. Louis, Missouri, where I stopped at City Sewing Room. This one is a sewing-specific thrift store, and ooh, I was immediately drawn in by their selection. Most of their material is either $1 or $2 a pound, which is a stunning deal. And then they have some premium stuff that looked to range between $4 and $6 a yard. Lots of upholstery fabric and trim, decent amount of knit material, great cottons. Also, all of their patterns and sewing books are straight up free, and they had a pretty solid amount of fabric outside that was entirely free as well. Also outside, good amount of parking. Lots of notions, yarn, and I walked out of there with 2 bags of fabric because I couldn't help myself. Also, I didn't really want to specifically film it because there were several people in there working, and I try not to film people without their consent, but they have probably the biggest sewing-specific creative space I've seen yet. So many sewing machines, sergers, and I was talking to some of the ladies there because they were all delightful and so kind, and she said that across the street there's a separate location that can also be rented and utilized, where they have like long arm quilting machines and embroidery machines. So yeah, one of the coolest, I mean, all of the creative spaces I've seen are cool, but this one, like, big tables, lots of machinery to use. It was really awesome. A second stop in St. Louis is Leftovers, etc. And y'all, I gotta admit, this place was hard to find. An old address for it still comes up on maps, so make sure you get the Woodson one. And then it's actually around the back of the building. Plenty of parking and worth the search though, because this is definitely the most unique store I've been in yet. It's massive and impeccably organized. I know I've said impeccably before, but like, this one takes the cake. Not only does it have art and craft and sewing and office supplies, but also just carefully preserved trash that could be used for arts and crafts, and a massive book exchange, and a whole bunch of what seems to be display areas where stuff isn't for sale. I think it's just showing off people's creations. Yeah, this one was fun to explore. As far as I can tell, most of the stuff is sold in a per bag filled suggested donation sort of way, so that's cool. One thing that is so exciting to me that I was noticing as I was putting together the spreadsheet is that so many of these creative reuse stores also offer classes or workshops or have some sort of creative space or even a gallery. Often those classes are for kids, but just as often they are for adults as well. And I just think it's awesome that they are finding ways to involve the community like that. Both providing affordable supplies for creativity and then also providing classes and workshops to expand your creativity. If you're looking for some art or craft workshops in your area and you happen to be close to one of these lovely 100+ stores, that would be a great place to check. In Springfield, Missouri, I stopped by Recreative Reuse, which has lots of parking in the back, but unfortunately was closed that day for a graduation. Like I said, these stores are often run by volunteers or just a very small number of people overall, so that's okay, it happens. Onward we go to Kansas City and Scraps KC. Now, if I seem lightly biased towards Scraps KC, it's because I met the lovely Sarah there and got to chat with her about the behind the scenes of running the store and what they do with the community, which was absolutely lovely. This is a we've got everything crafting thrift store, but hoo boy, they have a lot of fabric and yarn and sewing supplies specifically. Yarn was all individually priced, patterns looked to be $1, they had a fill-a-bag with scraps for $5. Most of the fabrics seemed to range from $4 to $5 a yard, and they had quite an array of quilting cotton, upholstery, fleece, you name it. Sarah said they got a big donation of these car mats recently, and wouldn't these be amazing for armor builds? Of course, they also carry many other art and craft and office supplies, like these massive amounts of marbles that are making me want to do a marble project. And they have a teacher resource center where teachers can schedule a time to shop for one low annual fee. I loved these kits they had out for various craft styles, so someone could see an example that they like, grab a kit, and try something new. And this is random, but so cool. They have a felt loom in the back that they rent out. Also, there was plenty of parking, because yeah, I am going to keep mentioning that. In Oklahoma City, we stumble upon, because it was a little hard to find, Trove Arts and Crafts. This one is a small store with plenty of parking, but it's neat and tidy and still has so many goodies. They had a great selection of craft books, creepy paper, a good yarn selection, and lots of various crafty bits of generalness. Fabric looks to be mostly $5 a yard and was very nicely separated by type and pre-measured. Patterns ranged from $2 to $5 each, and there were plenty of notions as well. Some people have asked me what my thoughts are on the closing of JoAnn, and this seemed like a good time to very lightly discuss it. To be honest, I don't really have strong feelings about it, kind of because I think I have both negative and positive feelings, and they cancel each other out into apathy. Like, I have trouble feeling super broken up about any corporation going out of business, but I also have to admit at the same time that I don't really have any nostalgia for JoAnn the way that a lot of people do. For me, the nostalgia was always tied to Hancock fabrics. That's where I went with my mom when I was young. That's where I remember looking through pattern books and feeling all the fabrics. And that's been gone for a long time now, so I also know someone who was a manager at JoAnn for a long time, and therefore you could say that I know too much, despite how frequently they would promote themselves as a wonderful place to work, a place that values its employees. That was not always the case, and again, I don't think that's super surprising to hear about any corporation. And I don't mean that to say that if you did work at JoAnn and you had a great experience, that experience is in any way invalid. Like, that's awesome, and I'm so glad you did. I have a feeling that largely has to do with who your management was, so good for them. However, I recognize that the presence of JoAnn, especially the number of stores and the size of stores and the varied different kinds of items you could find within one store, made crafting and sewing especially a lot more accessible to a lot more people. It definitely made it more convenient for me, and that's the main thing I'm losing. It's just convenience. But what is simply convenient for one person may be absolutely necessary for another person in a different situation. So I do really feel for those who may struggle to have access to the tools and supplies they need
now that JoAnn is gone. Convenience for some is almost always accessibility for others, and it sucks to lose that. For my personal feelings on losing JoAnn, though, because it is mainly about convenience, I've really been thinking this last year about whether convenience is really worth it. It's not like I set a specific goal for myself or like cold turkey cut off certain things, but I am actively working on doing things the slow way as often as possible. I would rather support small independent businesses as often as I can, even if that means that it takes longer to research, or I have to drive further, or I have to pause in the middle of a project and wait until I can get to a specific place to get a specific item. So ultimately, because we cannot change the fact that JoAnn is gone, I think this is an opportunity to look for small businesses to support. Your local quilting store, fabric store, needlework store, yarn store, pattern company, whatever it may be. I know for fabric, a lot of us want to buy in person, which is why I say local, but also small companies abound upon the internet. They're all still out there. They are hanging on to life. They could use our business and support, and they often have really cool and pretty dang unique products. And maybe that means having to pay for shipping and then wait a week or two for something to arrive, or maybe it means that you only go fabric shopping once every 4 months because it's a drive to get to the closest store. But most of all, I am excited to keep supporting creative reuse stores like all of these that I visited, and I'm excited for these to become better known to not only their local communities, but to people further away. I talk about remainders so much on my channel, and people have come from other countries, not specifically to go to remainders, but like people who have visited LA have told me they came to remainders because they heard about it. So whether you're visiting family and they happen to live close to one, or you're taking a little road trip, whatever it is, you know, keep in mind that these stores are out there, that they are awesome, that they always have changing stock, that they generally have amazing prices, and it's just so much fun to visit them and to see what they have. Remainders made my sewing journey possible, and it's really exciting to think that these other stores are doing that for someone else. They're probably doing it for a lot of someone else's. I mean, not only are they keeping materials out of landfills and offering more accessible prices, but also pretty much every single one of them has really served the community around them through these classes, workshops, gallery spaces, creative spaces. And that is just so incredible to see. Something that was so cool to me as I started the research for this trip and for the overall spreadsheet was seeing the growth. I had done this exact same research, making a map of all of the creative reuse stores that I could find in America. I want to say like a year ago, maybe even a little more than that, and there were significantly fewer options. So many new ones have cropped up, and I hope that continues to happen. Obviously, I could only get to a few of them on this trip, but genuinely, I would love to visit every single one of these. There's over 100 of them right now, and I can't wait. I want to see them all. If none of the ones that I stopped at in this video are close enough to you, check out the spreadsheet, check out the map, see if there's another one that is convenient to you. They are worth a bit of a drive in my opinion. This was such a fun way to make my road trip more purposeful and eventful, really encapsulating it's about the journey, not the destination. Also, I didn't just visit creative reuse stores, I also visited a whole bunch of independent bookstores, and that video is going to be on the second channel at some point. I don't really know when, but keep an eye out for it. May all your thriftiest desires be fulfilled. It's hot in here. Y'all, it's lovely to be in the forest, but ooh, my sneezing has been violent. I'm questioning my own sanity now. Eva! And your battery is dying and you could have done this at home. Everything's a little bit sticky.